Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. And we start with the latest news in the tussle between Poland and the European Court of Justice in Brussels. The Polish Constitutional Tribunal has just ruled that the provision of the European Union Treaty, on the basis of which the Court of Justice of the European Union obliges member states to apply interim measures concerning the national judiciary, is not in compliance with the Polish constitution. The ruling follows the line of reasoning earlier applied by similar national courts in Germany, France, Spain and Romania. In the event in which the European Court of Justice issues an injunction which is ultra vires against Poland as an EU member state, and which concerns the Polish political system, its judiciary, and the form in which Polish courts proceed with their cases, the Constitutional Tribunal rules that such injunctions are not compatible with Articles 2, 4, 7, 8 and 91 of the Polish Constitution. The European Union is set to introduce plans for a stricter approach to climate policy action this week, with a raft of measures designed to cut emissions drastically over the next decade. The Fit for 55 package, released on Wednesday, will face months of negotiations between the 27 European Union member countries and the European Parliament. The policies, if approved, will put the bloc, the world's third largest economy, on track to meet its 2030 goal of reducing planet warming emissions by 55% from 1990 levels.
It's the biggest scale we've ever seen. So the context for this is that we have 75% of the world's GDP has set carbon neutrality targets. The EU itself has decided, and it's legally bound to reach climate neutrality by 2050 and to reduce emissions significantly by 2030, which is in 9 years. The problem is there's absolutely no blueprint on how to do this. So this package is about finding out and setting up measures so that we can do this across all sectors.
The European Commission will propose 12 policies targeting energy, industry, transport and the heating of buildings. A leaked draft of one proposal would tax polluting jet fuel for the first time, while a revamp of the EU carbon market is also expected to hike CO2 costs for industry, power plants and airlines. The plans have exposed familiar risks between richer Western and Nordic EU states, where electric vehicle sales are soaring, and poorer Eastern countries that are worried about the social cost of weaning their economies off coal. The EU's eastern member states are particularly worried about the Commission's plan to launch a carbon market for transport and home heating, potentially raising household fuel bills.
The real concern is how costly this whole package will be, and in particular how much will heating bills or transport bills increase. And these are very valid concerns, and I think a big factor on how successful this package will be in both delivering on the ambition and also bringing people along with it and being agreed in its form will be how the social dimension will be managed.
Tougher EU CO2 standards for cars could effectively ban sales of new petrol and diesel cars in 2035. Brussels will also announce the details of its world-first carbon border tariff, targeting imports of goods produced abroad with high emissions such as steel and cement. Australian authorities have extended the severe lockdown in Sydney by at least 14 days after 3 weeks of initial restrictions failed to stamp out an outbreak of COVID-19 in the country's largest city. The situation has been made worse by the fact that Australia has among the lowest vaccination rates of OECD countries, standing at only around 10%. New South Wales State Premier Gladys Berejiklian said restrictions would need to remain in place until at least July the 30th. After she reported there were 97 new locally transmitted cases, representing a slight increase in daily infections from a day earlier. Of the 97 new cases, 24 people were infectious in the community.
To 8 p.m. last night, New South Wales recorded 97 cases of community transmission. Unfortunately, 24 of those were infectious in the community. That is the number. The 24 number is what we need to get down to as close to zero as possible before we can end the lockdown. And I really want to make that point clear. Can I also thank wholeheartedly, and I mean this sincerely, the Fairfield community for coming out in large numbers to get tested.
Berejiklian has repeatedly said that the lockdown, which has been in place since 26th of June, will only be lifted when the number of newly reported cases that are circulating in the community while infectious is close to zero.
Always hurts to say this, but we need to extend the lockdown at least a further 2 weeks, from Friday the 16th of July to Friday the 30th of July. That includes home learning. However, we'll obviously assess the situation at the end of those 2 weeks and provide information beyond that. We are prioritising vaccinating aged care workers and teachers in those key local government areas.
The shutdown has now been extended on 2 occasions after restrictions failed to curb daily case numbers. Total infections since the first was initially detected in the city's eastern suburbs in mid-June now stand at just under 900. 2 deaths have been reported, the first for the country this year. Lithuania has begun building a 550-kilometre barbed wire barrier on its border with Belarus after Minsk started the practice of flying in migrants from abroad to be sent illegally into the European Union. Belarus is using the measure to put pressure on Lithuania to stop criticising Belarus for its repression of pro-democracy protesters. The military-style wire coil will cost €5 million to put up and run along most of the frontier, which passes over sparsely populated areas and large stretches of forest and marsh.
We started to build it just today. The ask for the Minister of Interior Affairs came a bit earlier this week, but the building process started today. So it is going to be the basic engineer obstacle, also called barbed wire. It will be approximately 500-600 meters long and about 1.8 meters height. It's an obstacle for the crisis that our border patrols are currently facing. So it will help them a bit to control that most, let's say, critical place or distance on the border.
At a later date, the barrier will be reinforced with a 2-metre-high border fence topped by razor wire, costing an additional €41 million. In addition, the Lithuanian army has deployed 100 soldiers to help protect the border. Just over 1,500 people crossed the frontier this year, with 900 of them coming over in the first 9 days of July. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.